Hi, I'm Karen Q or Mrs. Q. Thank you for checking out my YouTube.
Oh, sorry about that. That was weird. My YouTube channel started playing. Hey, everybody. Say hello in the comments so I know you're here. It's great to see everybody. Going to give us a few minutes for people to join us. I'm glad I just got a message from YouTube telling me I'm streaming on my YouTube channel. That's always good to know. Let's see, where can I get the light? Good. The light looks pretty good right here. Right here. Hello, everyone. It's great to see you. It's so strange, I use the same lighting setup and the same green screen and the same everything every week, and it always looks a little bit different, which is kind of weird, but that's the way, I guess that's the way live streaming is. I hope everyone is really great tonight, and we're gonna have a really fun time tonight. Excuse me, talking about something you may have heard about, but you may not know the whole story of. So we'll have a really good time doing that, I hope. Oh, so many people here. It's great to see everyone from everywhere. It's so good to be with you on Thursday nights. I really enjoy it. It's one of my favorite things to do because, as you know, since I'm not doing tours, I don't get to see people. So on Thursdays, I get to see all of you, and it gives me something to work on all week and something to prepare to share with everyone. So I'm really happy to be here and to have you here too. Everything is well here. We are getting ready for a big event tomorrow night. Hold on a moment because I will demonstrate to you. Wow, so many people here. This is great. Hold on, I'm going to get something. My two lanterns, and there goes my camera. Let's see if my camera will refocus, I hope. Two lanterns to remind everyone, let's give me camera a chance, to remind everyone tomorrow night on the East Coast at 7 p.m. to put two lights in a window or hang two lanterns outside, put two lights on your porch, whatever you have, to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the ride of Paul Revere, William Dawes, and Stephen Prescott. Everyone always forgets him. I always forget him too. You put these down. Okay. Um, if you have a local historical organization that is hanging lanterns, please go out and support them. I will be here in 40 Fort, New York at the Nathan Dennison House with my reenactment group that I'm so happy to be a part of, the 24th Connecticut Militia Reenactment Group. And if you don't know why Northeastern Pennsylvania has a Connecticut reenactment group, well, you should come out to see us and find out why. Some of you may know that story. I'll be getting to that story as the year goes on, and I'm doing more movies and more things like that. Wow, Long Island. Let's see, Long Island. We're in Brooklyn, Rhode Island, Manassas, Virginia. We have people from everywhere. This is so great. So remember, tomorrow night, if you're on the East Coast, 7 o'clock, put those lights out. The rest of the country at dusk, put your two lights out. Let's light up America in celebration of our 250th anniversary. And the Ride of Paul Revere is the very first thing we're celebrating for our 250th anniversary. Now, some of you might say, but Mrs. Q, I thought 1776 is our 250th anniversary. No, our Revolutionary War begins with the Ride of Paul Revere, and the next day, the shots at Lexington and Concord. So that is the beginning of America 250. So support us. Wouldn't it be a great thing if you were up on the space station to see the entire East Coast light up tomorrow night at 7 p.m.? How incredible would that be? Everybody thinks that the original 13 colonies, especially the northern ones, are no longer patriotic and no longer love America. Let's show everybody that is not the case. So I will be with my group hanging two lanterns at the Nathan Dennison House. Mr. Q and I will be putting two lanterns before we leave for that out here on our balcony. And I've encouraged my neighbors to do the same. Encourage your neighbors to do it too. And let's show the world that America still loves our Revolutionary War history. And of course, this is the first of many events that will be unfolding over the next 8 years. Well, let me look at so many comments. This is wonderful. I'm on the Mississippi Gulf Course, and I will be hanging two lanterns along with other friends in sympathy for New England and in honor of Revere and company. Thank you. Not hanging friends also hanging lanterns. Yes, well, I I maybe have some ex-friends Mr. Q might like to hang. Actually, I'm going to be talking about the Sons of Liberty in a little while tonight, and some people, they've been hanging by the seat of their pants. Los Angeles, yes, Los Angeles as well. When it's dusk, put out your lanterns. It doesn't matter where in America you are. The Revolutionary War belongs to all of us Americans. If your ancestors were here during the Revolutionary War, or whether your ancestors just came here and you're naturalized first generation or naturalized yourself, this history is your history. It is all of our history. So celebrate it with all of us. Let's see, Brooklyn. We've got our LED candles for the window Friday night. Good for Brooklyn because, Brooklyn, hey, next year, 1776, is all about you guys. And I'll be doing some projects there that you'll be hearing about. Rhode Island, of course, Rhode Island, big, the Revolutionary War. Manassas, Virginia, get those lanterns out, Mr. Facemeyer. And I hope everyone is going to participate. It's going to be a wonderful night for us, kicking off our 250th anniversary. So thanks for giving me a chance to tell everyone, because as you can tell, I'm really excited about doing this. My friends in New York are doing it. If you're in New York, they're hanging lanterns at the Dutch Reformed Church in Port Richmond, Staten Island. And that's going to be the Sons and Daughters of the American Revolution. And I think the New York 1st Regiment Reenactment Group will be there. Up in Mount Vernon at St. Paul's Church, they'll be hanging lanterns there, and my good friend Mike Grillo and his family will be there, and Mike, I'm sure, will be there as General George Washington, and we're all going to have a great time. Unfortunately, I don't have lanterns. Yep, put your little candle lights in the window, whatever you have, LED, real candles, put your 2 lights in the window and celebrate the beginning of our independence. Let's see. Oh, my dog Rex is here. Of course, seeing what his paws are typing on the keyboard. It says, hit the blank students. I don't know what that means, Rex. Hit the students. So hello, everybody. Yes, get your kids to do it. It's really fun for kids. If you have a reenactment group that's doing it, bring your kids and your grandkids to see the reenactors. And by the way, if you follow me on social media, you've seen this. I have just joined forces with the Vinnie Langdon Show, which unfortunately is on right now on YouTube, with the Vinnie Langdon Show, Vinnie Langdon III. We have formed a production company called Patriotic Pictures, and we are going to be celebrating America 250 by making a series of videos about the reenactments coming up over the next 8 years. Focusing on the reenactment groups that do it, because the reenactors always get left out, and they're really the people doing the hard work, making their clothes, right? We all make our clothes, we all study the time, and I don't camp out, but a lot of people actually camp out and live the life while those reenactments are going on. Those are the people working hard to bring us our history, and so we are going to be telling their stories over the next 8 years. So that will be a really fun project for us to do. To remember those things. And of course, we're going to be doing a big project, should I say, on the Mesereau brothers of Staten Island, because we have to give those guys out in Setauket a little bit of a run for the money by now bringing out besides the Culper Spiring story, bringing out the Mesereau Spiring story. So we're going to be working on that as well, and a lot of other fun projects coming up. And for you guys in New York, we'll be in New York next year for the 250th anniversary of the Battle of New York, or the Battle for New York. So lots of great stuff coming up. But tonight, let's see, it is still 1775. So I'm 1775 tonight, and I'm rather downplayed in my outfit because it is 1775. We are in the middle of a non-importation, non-exportation, non-consumption agreement in the colonies, and I'll explain what that's all about. So Mrs. Q is quite plain, just a plain gown, plain linen skirt, plain linen scarf, and just a plain hairdo. So I know this doesn't look plain, but this is plain for 1775. So it's 1775, and lots of stuff has been going on, right? Our friends in Massachusetts, I have a whole bunch of notes here because I'm going to be referring to some pamphlets that are so long that just the title of them is probably more than you would read in your life, in your time. So we'll be getting to those. So let's talk about the sorry state of Massachusetts Bay Colony, right? And what our English friends, no longer friends, have done to them. Oh, someone says Mrs. Q could never be plain. Thank you so much, but this is a pretty plain Mrs. Q tonight. I have to get even more plain for my reenactment unit, which is going to be a challenge. But I'll be telling you about that. I'm working on a new, very low-key outfit that would suit a camp follower, or, you know, the ladies who went around and followed the soldiers. So I'm working on an outfit for that. And I'm also working on a very nice outfit for when I travel to Philadelphia. So some sewing projects going on too. So 1775, Massachusetts is just suffering terribly under the British occupation that has been going on for more than 1 year. You recall our friends in Massachusetts refused to allow the tea to be landed in their port. They threw the tea into the harbor. As a result, England punished them by blockading their port, removing their civilian government, replacing it with a military government, and also ending their civilian courts and requiring them to be tried in military courts or to be removed to England to be tried. So 1 year of that suffering has been going on. All sorts of debate has been raging in New York over whether we should continue to support Massachusetts, which some of us have. Of course, some of you out on the frontier know that many of your men have traveled up to Massachusetts to reinforce the men there. Men from the Pennsylvania frontier, the New York frontier, many men have already traveled to Massachusetts to reinforce them. Colonies have sent weapons, have sent powder, have sent food, and all sorts of supplies to support our friends in Massachusetts. But now, loyalists among us are trying to divide us and keep us from continuing that. And right here in New York, our assembly has been behaving shamefully, shamefully, I tell you, and not wanting to support Massachusetts and not wanting to even select representatives for the second meeting of the Continental Congress. Do you know they recently voted to refuse to thank the gentleman who attended the first Continental Congress? I think the vote was 14-9. 14 against thanking these gentlemen for their service, and only 9 in favor. So we, as usual in New York, have become the laughingstock of the other colonies. And let me read you a letter that was sent to us and published in the paper, a letter from London to New York on our assembly splitting from the other colonies. How long will this continue? We have been doing this for 6 years now. It says the plan of this accursed ministry. Now remember, this is from London. The person is speaking about London. The plan of this accursed ministry is to divide and govern in hopes of completing their principle of slavery by the base advantages and preferences now held out to New York, North Carolina, and Georgia. With what contempt ought the base majority of the New York Assembly be held? Have they not been honored with that disappropriation, to wit, tarring and feathering? It ought to be administered as a deterrent to others. For if that defection had not happened, we had the utmost reason to expect other measures would have been adopted than these villainous acts passed and passing. In other words, had New York not broken with the other colonies, London would have backed off their process of what they're doing to us. But because New York gave them hope that the colonies could be divided, they went on further and they asked, have your members who have been tarred and feathered at this point not been enough? Shall we continue to tar and feather all of you until you get the idea that your behavior is abhorred? So that is some of what's going on here in New York debate-wise, but it's going to get much more interesting even than this. Now, recently, we have a notice in Mr. Rivington's Gazetteer of an incredible event that happened on the New York Commons. I was not present. As you know, I am here in Hanover Square, which is toward the southern tip of the island, and the Commons is at the very northern border of the city. And you may know that in your time as Chambers Street. To me, it's also Chambers Street, but it's the country. It's far from here. So this occurred up on the Commons. This is from Mr. Rivington's Gazetteer. And he says that Mr. William Cunningham and Mr. John Hill are handled roughly by a mob of over 200 men near the Liberty Pole. Our Liberty Pole is on the Common. The former is called upon, Mr. Cunningham that is, to go down on his knees and damn his popish King George. But he exclaims instead, God bless King George. This so enraged the people that they dragged him through the green, tore his clothes off his back, and robbed him of his watch. Hill was treated in an equally bad manner. Now, William Cunningham is an ardent loyalist. Everyone knows him. He's a horse breeder and horse trainer. He gives riding lessons. He breeds fine horses. And our friends in the Sons of Liberty did this to him a short time ago. Dragged him around on the commons, stole his clothes, left him naked and embarrassed, and stole his watch. Since this has happened, Mr. Cunningham has removed himself to Boston, where he has gone to aid the British there. So good riddance to Mr. Cunningham, and I hope he never returns. What became of John Hill? I'm sorry, I can't say. Now, I mentioned that the Assembly has refused to thank the members of the First Continental Congress. Just our usual stupidity that goes on here, our factionalism and ridiculousness. And Mr. Isaac Lowe, who has participated in many types of government here, from the mayor's council to our assembly, to other things, and also was a delegate to the First Continental Congress, has declared, as a result of what our assembly just did in refusing to thank them or recognize them, he says he refuses to serve. He says, don't elect me to go back a second time. If you do elect me, I will not go. He says, because I've long been weary of politics, which appear to be too much influenced by malevolence and faction. So Mr. Lowe now is refusing to ever serve again. A great loss to us, as he has been a fine man and has served us quite well in the past. Now, I need a drink of water. Hold on just a moment. Yes, water, if you're wondering, which Mr. Q has delivered to us from spring water north of the city. As you know, the water here in the city is not drinkable. It's even rather questionable if you boil it first. So Mr. Q has water shipped to us from outside of New York City. I know that is a delicacy and not many people can afford to do that. So Mr. Q and I are very grateful of our station and that we can do that for ourselves. Now, for the last, I don't know how long, months, there has been a debate going on between two gentlemen in the town who for now will remain anonymous. A pamphlet debate going on. And I have here pictures of the pamphlets for you so you can get an idea of what the cover of a pamphlet looks like in my time. And let me open up my various backgrounds here. By the way, tonight's background, if you are interested, is from the Billop House or the Conference House in Staten Island, New York. Some of you may have been there. This is where the Staten Island Peace Conference was held in August of 1776, early September of 1776. I actually don't know that yet because it's 1775, so pretend I didn't say that, but this is the beautiful Billop House in Staten Island. So here is our first pamphlet, and that is only the title page. Look at that. It says, I'm not sure if you're able to read it, it says, "Free Thoughts on the Proceedings of the Continental Congress, held at Philadelphia, September 5th, 1774. So this is going to be the First Continental Congress, wherein their errors are exhibited, their reasons confuted, and the fatal tendency of their non-importation, non-exportation, and non-consumption measures are laid open to the plainest understandings, and the only means pointed out for relieving and securing our present happy Constitution is a letter to the farmers and other inhabitants of North America in general, and to those of the province of New York in particular, by a farmer." How do you like that for a title? This is the first one, and it's the shortest one, at only, I think, 8 pages. And I'm not going to make you listen to 8 pages. I'm just going to share the highlights. So this is a gentleman who calls himself a farmer. And he starts out by saying this, and somehow I get the idea that you may be feeling some of these things in your time. So listen carefully to what he has to say. He says the American colonies are unhappily involved in a scene of confusion and discord. The bands of civil society are broken, the authority of government weakened, and in some instances taken away. Individuals are deprived of their liberty, their property is frequently invaded by violence, and not a single magistrate has had courage or virtue enough to interpose. From this distressed situation, it was hoped that the wisdom and prudence of the Congress lately assembled at Philadelphia would have delivered us. The eyes of all men were turned to them. We ardently expected that some prudent scheme of accommodating our unhappy disputes with our mother country would have been adopted and pursued. But alas, they are broken up without ever attempting it. They have taken no one step that tended to peace. They have gone on from bad to worse and have either ignorantly mistreated, carelessly neglected, or basely betrayed the interests of all the colonies. Now, my friends, beware of what this farmer is saying here, because you would think that he might be talking about the excesses of what has happened to the people in Massachusetts Bay, who have been subject to all of these things. A scene of confusion and discord. The bands of civil society are broken, certainly. The authority of their government is gone, not just weakened, and taken away. Of course, it was taken away. Individuals have been deprived of their liberty. Their property is invaded by violence, and no one has had enough courage to interpose. Is he talking about the suffering of the people of Massachusetts Bay? Well, he isn't. He's a loyalist. He's a Tory. He is claiming that that is the situation of Tories here in the city of New York. You have to be very careful when you read things from my time, because you might read them thinking one side has written them when it turns out the other side has written them. These gentlemen are very clever in the way they speak and the way they address you. So be very careful when you're reading things like this from my time. So he goes on to talk about the consequences of our non-importation, non-exportation, non-consumption agreement. What that means in your terms is a boycott, that the Congress decided that all of the states, all of the colonies would enter into a boycott of trade and consumption of English goods. In other words, no English goods will be allowed to land here. We will send England no raw materials for their manufactures, and we will consume nothing that travels on English ships or is any way connected to England. So for instance, we will not consume the East India tea, no matter how it comes into America. So even if it comes in on non-English ships, we will not buy it or consume it. So that's non-importation. Nothing comes in from England. Non-exportation, no raw materials go to England, and we don't consume anything that makes it here that's from England. And you might remember we did this 10 years ago in 1765, 1766, in order to protest the Stamp Act. And it was very successful. It took us only 3 months to make the king repeal the Stamp Act. So this is a very potent way of making our displeasure known to England, a very successful way. But the farmer says that he is particularly worried about all of this because the farmers themselves are going to be deeply injured. And he says the reason he is worried about this because, he is a farmer himself, and he will equally be affected by this. And he says, the farmers will lose their markets to Canada, because he said, surely the flax that you grow here that they need in Ireland to spin linen, to weave linen, can be got in Canada, and they'll simply buy from Canada. And how do you know that when this agreement is ended, that they will return to you and that you'll have any market at all for your flax? And he goes through a whole different list of commodities that we ship to England and Ireland that he says we may never regain markets for. And should the farmers suffer so terribly as a result of that? He also says that this will cause job losses in England. And he says it will cause, this is what he says, clamors, discord, confusion, mobs, riots, insurrection, rebellion in Great Britain, Ireland, and the West Indies. And he says these horrific acts are intended by your Congress. Well, of course they are. What does Mr. Farmer think the purpose of this is? I have an idea that Mr. Farmer was here during the Stamp Act, and he knows the intention of this is to cause discord in Great Britain in order to force them to change their mind, to change their course of behavior. So, of course, that's the intention of the Congress. But then he goes on to say, if Great Britain is ruined, well, what will become of us? Indeed. Didn't we hear this argument when the Tea Act was passed? Do you remember when the Tea Act was passed, someone here in New York said that if the East India Company failed, Great Britain would fail, and what would become of us? We would never be able to take care of ourselves without Great Britain to look after us. And everyone here laughed and said, we don't care. We can take care of ourselves. Everything we have here, we've built ourselves, and we can certainly take care of ourselves if needed. And of course, we didn't buy the tea, which is the reason we're having so many problems now, isn't it? Oh, the East India Company hasn't failed yet, and Great Britain still stands. So, oh, someone just put a note on YouTube. Who knows who this is? I'm just about to reveal who the farmer is. That is very good. You are correct. That's who this is. And so I ask you, does this sound to you like a simple farmer? Does all of this and this type of prose sound like something written by a simple farmer? Or does it sound like an educated gentleman? I don't know many farmers by trade who write like this. They generally are too busy existing to be educated in this manner. So I think this might be a gentleman, and it is a gentleman. His name is the Reverend Samuel Seabury. Someone calls him Samuel Peaseberry, and he's been called other things as well. This is the Reverend Samuel Seabury, and he's not any reverend. He happens to be the bishop of the Anglican Church in Westchester, just north of us, the Church of England, the official crown religion here in America. So Samuel Seabury is not a farmer at all. He's not going to be hurt by this as a farmer would. He's going to be hurt by this as a British aristocrat would be hurt by it. So that is the first pamphlet in this series, Free Thoughts on the Proceedings of the Continental Congress. And someone is going to respond. Here is the responding pamphlet. And let's go to our next picture. Here is the responding pamphlet. A full vindication of the measures of Congress from the calumnies of their enemies in answer to a letter under the signature of A.W. Farmer, whereby his sophistry is exposed, his cavils confuted, his artifices detected, and his wit ridiculed, in a general address to the inhabitants of Americans and a particular address to the farmers of the province of New York. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but the same printer has printed both of these, Mr. James Rivington, and he will print the whole series for both gentlemen. So now we have a gentleman who says, this is a full vindication of the Congress, and I'm going to address the lies of the enemies. their deceptions, I'm going to unfold their lies, and I'm going to show you how their wit isn't witty at all, how this gentleman has no wit. And so this one, so the first one is about 8 pages. This one is 35 pages, which I will not make you suffer through, of course. I'll tell you the truth that I have not read the entirety of these pamphlets. And even I believe Mr. Q has not read them. When they get a little bit longer, there's one of them that when Mr. Q saw it in the shop, he immediately left, went to the merchant's coffee house, I think, and had a couple shots of whiskey. He saw what the one coming up looked like. Can these gentlemen ever stop talking so much? I think in your time you have something called social media where people are expected to be very short and concise. Well, not in my time, that is certain. So our friend, in his full vindication, says to us, it was hardly to be expected that any man could be so presumptuous as openly to controvert the equity, wisdom, and authority of the measures adopted by the Congress, an assembly truly respectable on every account. Whether we consider the characters of the men who composed it, the number and dignity of their constituents, or the important ends for which they were appointed, attempts are daily making to diminish the influence of their decisions and prevent the salutary effects intended by them. The importance of such insidious efforts is evident from the general indignation they are treated with, so that no material ill consequences can be dreaded from them. But lest they should have a tendency to mislead and prejudice the minds of a few, it cannot be deemed altogether useless to bestow some notice upon them. So, in other words, they are happily at work trying to demean the Congress, but no one takes them seriously. We're all laughing at them. We're all laughing at them. But just in case they might be convincing a few people, they must be addressed. My dog Rex says sophisticated is not pure, mixed with foreign substances. Well, I wonder what Mr. Seabury would think of that, mixed with foreign substances. So he says that these men, or this gentleman, the farmer, is an enemy to the natural rights of man, that he wants to see one part of our species enslaved by another, that he has an aversion to common sense, and he wants to persuade us of the absolute sovereignty of Parliament and all ways we have been plundered by them. In other words, the supremacy of Parliament and their right to plunder our wealth here. He says, does Great Britain have the right to dispose of the lives and properties of us in America? That this gentleman, this prior gentleman, the farmer, seems to think that is their right. And he says the difference between freedom and slavery. Freedom, a man is governed by laws to which he has given his consent, either in person or by representative, governed by the will of another, right? So freedom means you have selected your representatives or you have given approval yourself. Slavery is to be governed by the will of another. Freedom means your life and property are your own. Slavery says your life and property depend upon the pleasure of a master. So you can see the way he's equating England and the Parliament and the aristocracy there as slaveholders and us, their slaves. And he goes on to vindicate the proceedings of the Congress as being fully legal and of service to the people here, and the necessity of the non-importation, non-exportation, non-consumption agreement. And that goes on, as I mentioned, for 35 pages. Next, we have the next one. A view of the controversy between Great Britain and her colonies, including a mode of determining their present disputes finally and effectually, and of preventing all future contentions, in a letter to the author of a full vindication of the measures of Congress from the calumnies of their enemies, by A.W. Farmer, author of Free Thoughts. So this is by the author of the first pamphlet. And this one is, shall we see how long this one is? Oh, I don't say here, but I believe this one is even longer than 35 pages. So this one is, again, our friend A.W. Farmer, a Westchester farmer, he means, going through what the Congress did last year and talking about how bad it is, and then suggesting ways that we can restore our relationship with Great Britain. And most of those ways are to be subservient to them. Next, another one. It never ends here. I tell you, it never ends. And the next one. Oh, I think I had them backwards for you. I think I did. This was the next one. This was the last one. Which one is this one? See, even I cannot keep these straight. Is this the Congress canvassed? Yes, this is the next one. The last one was a view of the controversies. I showed you the wrong one. My apologies. So that was the last one, a view of the controversies between Great Britain and the colonies. And the next one is this one. My apologies. Even I cannot keep these straight. I have to tell you, it took me an hour today to be able to recall the orders in which these were published, as the publisher, you might see, only puts a date on the bottom and not a month. So it was very difficult for me to recall what order they were published in so that I could show them properly to you. As you see, I'm still somewhat confused. So the next one is to the merchants of New York. To me, merchants. The Congress canvassed or an examination into the conduct of the delegates at their grand convention held in Philadelphia, September 1st, 1774, addressed to the merchants of New York. So this is addressed to us, the merchants of New York. Someone tells me, what is Wikipedia? Someone says something called Wikipedia has them in order. So I think that's in your time. You can look at that. This one is 62 pages. If you'd like to read it yourself, you can download all of these at something in your time called archive.org. They're all there. You can download them. So this is to the merchants of New York. He says, on the present unhappy and distressed state of our country. And he tells us we are very important to the community. Of course we are. And he says we are highly influential and that we are highly respected. I would like to think so. He also tells us we are of respectable character. Is someone trying to get on our good side before perhaps saying something in here we might not like? Are we being flattered here? And he says we're, of course, all decent and of good manners. But he says, I am just a plain countryman. He's still pretending to be a farmer. And it's a very long-winded pamphlet, of course, about all the disaster that will befall all of mankind if we merchants proceed with the non-importation agreement. I think it will be the complete end of civilization as we know it. 62 pages of it here, encouraging we find upstanding merchants of respectable character, influential, important to the community, to not do the non-importation, non-exportation, non-consumption agreement. So you can read all of that if you want to. I think this is the one that sent Mr. Q to the Merchant's Coffee House for a couple shots of whiskey. I think he just gave it to me and said, here, Mrs. Q, you're the merchant here. You read it. I'm going out to see my friends. I'm going out to see who's at the Merchant's Coffee House. And then we have the last one in the series, which you may have heard of in your time. I hear this one is famous in your time. The Farmer Refuted, or a more impartial and comprehensive view of the dispute between Great Britain and the colonies, intended as a further vindication of the Congress in answer to a letter from A.W. Farmer entitled A View of the Controversy Between Great Britain and Her Colonies, including a mode of determining the present disputes finally and effectually, and on and on. Would you like to guess how many pages this one is? This one is, you ready? 82 pages. Yes. And I will read you some highlights from it because this is really, quite clever, this last one. He says, the writer of the ensuing sheets can, with truth, say more than the generality of those who either espouse or oppose the claim of the British Parliament, which is that his political opinions have been the result of mature deliberation and rational inquiry. So this is the author talking about himself before you get to the pamphlet. So he says, this opinion is the result of mature deliberation and rational inquiry. They have not been influenced by prejudice, nor by any interested or ambitious motives. They are not the spawn of licentious clamors or popular declamation, but the genuine offspring of sober reason. This is really good. To those who are inclined to doubt his sincerity, he begs leave to recommend a little more charity. To those who are possessed of greater candor and who yet may be disposed to ask how he can be sure that his opinions have not been influenced by prejudice, he answers, because he remembers the time when he had strong prejudices on the side he now opposes. So this gentleman says, I was once on the other side and have changed my mind. His change of sentiment, he firmly believes, proceeded from the superior force of the arguments in favor of the American claims. I'm not so sure this author was ever on the other side, but let's continue. Though he is convinced there are too many whose judgments are led captive by the most venal and despicable motives, yet he does not presume to think every man who differs with him either a fool or a knave. He is sensible that there are men of parts and virtue whose notions are entirely contrary to his. To imagine there are not wise and good men on both sides must be the effect of a weak head or a corrupt heart. He earnestly entreats the candid attention of the judicious and well-meaning, and hopes that what he has written may be read with as much impartiality and as sincere a regard to truth as the importance of the controversy demands. And he then proceeds in the following 83 pages to insult the other author. You know, and he says, I resume my pen in reply to the curious epistle you have been pleased to favor me with. And here we go. It's rancorous, illiberal, and imperious. The argumentative part is puerile and fallacious, etc., etc., etc. And if you like, you can read it yourself. So I think this gentleman in the future does become well known for accusing his opponent first of insulting him, and then him insulting his opponents. And I think you know who the author of this is. This is young Mr. Alexander Hamilton, and I'm not aware that he actually was ever on the side of the crown. If he was, he must have been a very young man, a teenager, because at the time he's writing this, he is only, I think, 19 or 20 years old. So he's still quite young when he's writing these things. Well, of course, eventually Mr. Hamilton and Mr. Seabury do learn that they are the two gentlemen opposing each other. And you might know Mr. Hamilton is a student at King's College at this time, which means he's a student in a school that is run by the Church of England, which apparently has enraged Reverend Seabury. And he has remarked to others that he is incensed that a brat from King's College has taken up his pen to debate him. So some very interesting back and forth from the gentlemen of our town. And these, of course, have spanned many months, as you can see, from the fall of 1774 through early 1775. So, you know, very interesting to take a look at if you would like to see them in your time. And I will not require you to suffer any further hearing from these missives. Now, I do want to talk about an event that has occurred as a result of the non-importation, non-exportation agreement, which I will say, of course, I agreed to here in New York and has been in full bloom for quite some time now. So we are not buying or selling from England or consuming anything that comes through them or from them in any other way. And as a result of that, most of us have been behaving very well. We have all taken losses in our shops as a result of this because, you know, we have all had goods coming in from England after the time of the agreement that the agreement would go into effect, right? So we have ships that have already left and would not arrive here until after the agreement is to take effect. And we would not be able to receive or sell any of those goods. And we have all agreed to this from New England to Georgia. All of us merchants have agreed to this. So it has been at economic distress to all of us. I would be lying if I didn't say that wasn't so. But we have one person in New York, or I should say two persons, two brothers, who decided that they were not going to agree to the agreement, to the non-importation agreement. And they took their ship called the Beulah, and rather than attempt to bring it into New York with forbidden goods on it, they brought it over and unloaded it in front of our friends in in front of Elizabeth, New Jersey. Elizabethtown to me, Elizabeth to you, right on the harbor, right opposite Staten Island. So they unloaded the Beulah in New Jersey, removed all of the goods that were a violation of the agreement, and then brought the ship around to their dock at Wall Street and attempted to unload the other goods. Problem for them is that our friends in the Sons of Liberty in New Jersey saw them, told our friends in the Sons of Liberty here, and before we knew it, there was a mob of more than 100 men at the dock threatening the captain and crew if they attempted to get off the ship or unload any of the contents. And as you can imagine, this caused quite, a stir in the town, and various gentlemen went down to the dock and tried to negotiate an agreement, but the Beulah was sent away. The men who did this were John and Robert Murray. The Murrays own a shipping company, and the dock at Wall Street is their dock, Murray's Wharf. They live in a beautiful estate just north of the city called Murray Hill or Eichenberg, and it faces right out onto the East River, a lovely estate. They're one of the wealthiest families in New York. And they still tried to cheat. As a result of this, the Sons of Liberty met, or the association as they call themselves, and decided that the Murray family should be banished from New York, as we were now again the laughing stock of all of the colonies, right? It was bad enough that we had the problem that our assembly would not thank our representatives to the Continental Congress, and that our assembly doesn't want to send people to the Second Continental Congress, but now one of our own has broken the association agreement. And they were told to leave New York. Well, Mrs. Murray, a brilliant lady, I have to say, one of the most brilliant here, is a friend of Captain Alexander McDougall, who you might know is very prominent in the Sons of Liberty and the association, Captain McDougall. And she wrote a letter to Captain McDougall, and she said to him, "Why, sir, we know that what our husbands have done is a terrible thing, but if you banish us, you will make homeless, wandering paupers of the women and children of our family. And isn't that too high a penalty for us to pay for what our husbands have done? Please, sir, there must be some other kind of accommodation that can be made for us." Now, Captain McDougall, being a fine man, not wanting to make homeless, wandering paupers of women and children, how brilliant was it of Mrs. Murray to propose it that way to Captain McDougall, that he would be responsible for homeless, wandering paupers, the women and children. Oh, hello, back to Arizona. So they made an agreement, and the agreement was that the Murrays could place an apology in the colonial newspapers for what they'd done, admitting their guilt, apologizing to everyone, and with that, the Murrays would be able to stay in New York. So let's give great credit to Mrs. Murray, who got her husband and brother-in-law and her whole family out of a terrible situation. And let's go back to the Billop House, where you can see the beautiful room behind me. And this is the parlor, as I said, in the Billop House, or the Conference House on Staten Island, a beautiful place to visit if you ever have the opportunity to go there. One of the things to think about when you think about 1775 is that the people in England who lived in those massive estates with, gold leaf door frames, golden chandeliers, gold leaf furniture, silver, silks, brocades, and all sorts of expensive things on massive estates and land, wanted to tax people who lived like this to bail them out of their bad financial decisions. So you might want to think about it that way. And the Billop House here is wealthy for the American colonies. This is wealthy for New York, the Billop House. Most people do not live this well. Many people in 1775 live in a very small house. It might just be one room with a hearth and a loft overhead for sleeping, and that is their home. So the people of England living in enormous estates and mansions wanted to take wealth from the people here to pay for their bad financial decisions. And this has caused this sad state of affairs between America and Great Britain. And I want to thank all of you for joining me tonight. I went on a little long, but those pamphlets are something else, aren't they? I really encourage you to read them. Most people only read the last one, The Farmer Refuted. I don't think anybody really reads all 83 pages of that, even in your time, unless they really want to punish themselves by reading that. But it is good to have at least some knowledge of the ones that came before in order to know what Mr. Hamilton is saying in his. Oh, and what happened to Mr. Seabury? Mr. Seabury later in 1775 is going to be kidnapped by a mob of Connecticut Sons of Liberty, kidnapped and thrown in jail in Connecticut, and will eventually go back to England. So you can see here that he is not a very well-liked gentleman and absolutely not just a Westchester farmer. So thank you all for joining me. Don't forget your lanterns tomorrow night, 7 o'clock on the East Coast, at dusk, wherever else you are. 2 lights, 2 candles, 2 lanterns, whatever you have to begin our celebration of our 250th anniversary of the United States of America. Greetings from Morris County, New Jersey. It's so great to see everybody. And for those of you who tuned in late or who missed it, this will stay on YouTube and Facebook, I think forever, so you can watch it anytime. So I will be back with you next Thursday. For those of you who listen to my radio show on Sundays, there is no radio show Sunday due to Easter Sunday. And by the way, happy Easter to those of you who celebrate Easter. And I hope those of you who celebrate Passover had a wonderful Passover. And I'll be back next Thursday for more on 17 and 75. And I bet you can guess what I'm going to talk about, because the big anniversary is this Saturday. So thanks very much for joining me. Put out your lanterns. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you all next week. Thank you so much.